All right, so we've got another little demonstration here today. We're going to be drawing a pear in graphite. For those that may have seen the apple drawing video that I did, we worked in charcoal, but this time we're going to do graphite. Now I've got a few more materials here that I normally talk about in class. They're just extras in case I need them, because I didn't know. You know, you always want a backup plan, or you always want to make sure. So I've got, and it's also I don't want to, because graphite with these small pencils, it's going to take a long time to cover this whole area. So we brought in some tools that, that have a lot more graphite to them. There's a lot more graphite on this surface than this, which is mostly wood. So mostly wood with just a little bit of graphite at the end there. So again, I'll talk about what these are, but they're I may not even use them. But again, these are graphite as well. These are just graphite sticks. These are graphite sticks, and then these are woodless graphite pencils. These right here, and they've been used a lot, so there's not much left of them. They don't have to be short like that. They start out like a regular pencil. So this is a 4B. Woodless pencil, it's just a 4B. This is also a 4B woodless pencil, and this is by Derwent. They're the only ones I know that make these, and it's kind of a strange sort of graphite. It's well, it's supposed to be hard, and it's kind of like a 2H, but it's really crumbly. It leaves a lot of graphite on the surface, and so. And again, I don't know if I'm going to use this. We'll see. If I do, it can be a great tool. So again, it's just called a hard, but it's about like a 2H. This is again just a bigger graphite stick. This is by what is it? Art Graph, and again just a bigger chunk of graphite, and it just says soft. Some of these larger ones, it won't have the alphanumeric system. It'll just have hard, medium, or soft. This says it's soft. Some are stamped, and they'll actually have, oh, this is a 2B or a 4B or a 6B. This is a kneaded eraser. We've got here a vinyl eraser or a plastic eraser. These are plastic erasers too. They're just a little smaller. So this is a kind of like a mechanical pencil, except it's got that eraser in it. Again, I don't know if I'll use it, but again, these can be kind of fun. This is again the same thing, except this is again just a smaller eraser. Again, I don't know if I'll use these, but I just pulled them out. This is an electric eraser. It spins, and can take out little highlights and stuff. Again, it's made with just a plastic eraser. The plastic erasers are really good for erasing in graphite. With your graphite, you don't want anything to mess up the paper. I've got some crumblies here, those left behind. You don't want anything messing up the paper, so you're going to use the plastic erasers, because they don't mess up the surface of the paper. The paper I'm using is a 400 series Strathmore 80-pound medium surface or medium texture paper, and it's just right out of a drawing pad. You can find it anywhere. If you find the 300 series, that's fine as well. Again, I think that's 70-pound paper. Medium texture is the biggest thing. Graphite builds on itself, so you want some texture. If it's smooth, the graphite won't build on itself. It won't build up those different layers. And if it doesn't build up the layers, the graphite can't go as dark. So on smooth paper, your drawing would be lighter. These are the big things we want to have. Again, these are the pencils, the 5 pencils we use in class all the time. This is a 4H. Put that to the side. This is a 2H graphite pencil. This is an HB. The 4H is our not darkest. The 4H is the lightest, and then your 2H is a little darker. Your HB that I just had, that's our workhorse that we do most of our sketching with. Then we have a 2B, and we want a 4B. Now I couldn't find my 4B, and this guy was around, so I grabbed him. He's actually an 8B, which is a little much, but there you go. there's not a whole lot of difference between a 4B and an 8B, but like I said, I couldn't find the 4B. This is a 4B, so I'll definitely have this guy too. So let's get started on this thing. So I've got my little pear sketched out here. I'm going to start. Now I've done some mapping. That means I've been looking at some of the different shapes that we've got here, and I'm going to go ahead and put some value in those shapes to create this into a drawing, and so let's go ahead and get started with this. And again, we always start simpler and go more complex whenever we draw. I'm starting out with a 4H. We're going to start putting in just the lightest values to start with. Again, with graphite pencil, you start with the lightest values and you build up to your dark. So right now we're putting in some of the lighter values for the pear. I think, yeah. So sometimes I'll start at different points, but there's so many subtle plane changes on this guy that I wanted to go ahead and make sure that I had my I want to start out with the lights, because again, there's so much going on with these light half tones, these light, and you can call them half tones. You can also call them middle values, but you've got to really be you want to be aware of what's happening with those middle values. They're really, really important to the drawing. So yeah, we want to go ahead and start to make sure that we're addressing all these different values as far as that goes. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. Now, I should be trying to do this. I'm kind of, whenever I get started in this, I haven't kind of gotten into my groove. So I started out a little, this is a little too random. I should actually be trying to do this, not random, but there's too many spaces between my lines. I should be trying to put in as uniform a value as I possibly can stand to do, and I'm just not doing it. So I want to improve that, because that's you want to, even though I'm going to go over this and over this and over this with these 4H's, and I'm also using very little pressure. These 4H pencils, if you're not careful, they will score your paper, and once your paper is scored, game over. You're never going to have the same surface again. Now, I think I'm actually going to come in here and begin to put in some of the values surrounding the pear. Now we're also going to do a little bit more of a finished drawing in graphite because of how we use a lot of these very sharp pencils and things. It takes a lot longer to put down value than, say, the charcoal pencils that we were using yesterday, because when I was doing the apple, or whenever you use charcoal, you're going to blend some stuff. Now, not always, but a lot of times you're blending stuff, and so when you're blending stuff, it's going to put down very quickly some different tones, and with graphite, we're not going to do a whole lot of blending. I might do some, but I want to try to do this without blending. It's just, how long is it going to take? Because graphite drawings usually take anywhere to twice as long to 3 times, sometimes as much as 4 times as long as that charcoal drawing, just because, again, of how small the tips are, and that we're not doing a lot of blending. Now, sometimes I'll have people ask me, well, why aren't we going to do any smearing or anything like that? And the reason is I first want people to learn how to do stuff without relying on quote-unquote smearing stuff around. And if you do that to graphite, it really starts to look dirty very quickly. And the last thing you want is your drawing to look like it's got dirt all over it, and it will really start to look like that if you're not careful. Even when you blend, you have to use very specific tools And I know people, pardon me, that'll say, "Hey, well, I've done drawings and I've done it with my finger and it looks like just fine." And the truth is, it doesn't. It looks terrible. And the other thing is that it also messes up your drawing when you're using your finger. The reason you don't want to do it with your finger, especially, I mean, do it with a different tool. Never use your finger, because what happens is that graphite loves the oils of your skin, and it will attach itself to any oils that it finds on the paper. So if I haven't washed my hands really good and I'm doing a drawing and I touch that drawing with oily fingers, and I start to especially if you start to blend, a fingerprint will appear right in the middle of your drawing, and there's no way of getting that out. Once that's there, game over. You've got to start the drawing all over again, because there's no getting that out. So when you start using your finger to smear stuff around, you start leaving oil everywhere, and it's really hard to get a really good looking surface once you've done that. It's not impossible, but the work that it would take to get it there is probably more than you're going to want to spend, because you're going to take 5 to 6 times as much time to take that area and try to get it to overcome that fingerprint. So we're going to try to touch as little as possible the paper. You can't probably tell, but my wrist isn't even touching the paper. And in fact, I just put my arm under my wrist so I can bump it up a little bit. Again, keep it off the surface. I'm going just a side to side. Now again, it's kind of at a slight angle because this is just comfortable. It's a very comfortable angle. So I'm doing, and my pencil's going side to side at like a 30-degree angle or something like that. And that's all right. It doesn't have to be, a true vertical sort of not for what I'm doing. It doesn't, not for this particular area. There might be a time you need that, but this is not it. Not to mention, if I was going to do that, I'd probably turn my board 30 degrees. But so anyways, we're going to go ahead and we're just trying to get some value down here. Now, this is as much as, so I'm going to show you this. Now, I'll just tell you, whenever you blend, use we were talking a little bit about blending, don't use a finger. I can use a paper towel. No, not a paper towel, that's too harsh. Pardon me, but Kleenex, there we go, something soft. Some people will use Q-tips. Those are, again, you have to use them gently because graphite is really, it likes a pristine surface. It's kind of like, well, it's not kind of like, it wants the surface to be nice and smooth. And if you start roughing it up, you'll never get it to look the same. So this is just a brush. This is actually a makeup brush. My wife was going to throw this away, and I was like, "What are you doing? That's a nice brush." She's like, "Yeah, I got a better one." I'm like, "Give me that." Usually I'll use a goat hair brush. Goat hairs are just soft. They're very soft. You'll see them in art stores. White bristles, and again, they're very, very soft. They're also very inexpensive. You can get like a 2 or 4 inch brush for under $5 or something like that. So they're very, very, very inexpensive. So again, I'm just brushing this a little bit, and the reason I'm actually doing this, in case you're like, "Hey, wait a minute, I thought you said," well, we're just trying to soften a little bit of this texture. Now again, I can also use, this is a very soft cloth. It's almost as soft as satin. It's a very, very thin cotton. I can go ahead and do that. But here's the thing, and you can probably see it a little bit in the camera, but it's even worse in real life. Once you do that, it looks terrible. And it does right now. It looks awful. So whenever you blend, you don't just leave it. You have to then go back in with another, whoops, that's not what I wanted. You have to go in with another tool. So, see, maybe I'll use my 2H. So I've got my 2H pencil. I originally was going to grab my 4H, but I'm going to grab my 2H, I think. And I'm going to come back over this area that got softened, because if I don't do this, this area is going to look terrible. It's going to look absolutely awful. I was using my 4B before, I believe, but I was using it just gently, very, very soft. You can layer your pencils, and this is a harder pencil. Again, it's a 2H, and I'm layering it over 4B. Now, as long as you do this really smooth, you can layer your pencils, and not only that, but layering your pencils will give your drawing more depth. Now that I'm starting to put some graphite over that, and again, this is really subtle. So there's some things that are so soft the camera just doesn't pick it up. But if we see it in real life, we pick it up. It's you know, we're like, hey, there it is, and it's, you know, as bright as day. And so what I'm doing is by putting more value down. Again, I don't brush and leave it, because again, it's going to look like someone came over and smeared this drawing. So I'm going to come back in with my pencils, and I'm going to put some more value down. And this graphite has a, there's something right there. Sometimes that'll happen. I don't know what that is. It could have been oil. It could have been sometimes these erasers, these knead erasers, have a bit of oil in them. So you got to really take care of your surfaces. Let's see if I can get it out with just a little bit of. All right, well, that's not going to happen. So what I'm going to have to do is I tried to lighten it with my eraser, and then I come back around it very gently with this light pencil. It's softened it, but I'm going to have to make sure that I remember that area. And you're going to have this happen in a lot of drawings. That's a good example of, you know, if it's not a perfect surface, the graphite's like, nope, 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 and it makes it look really rough. And if I'm trying to do texture, that's fine, but as of right now, I'm not trying to do texture in this drawing. And I'm just trying to get enough value back here so that we can see the pear, because this drawing is about the pear. It's not about the wall. This is what this is, the wall behind it. And that's not what this drawing is about. It's really about the pear. Another thing about graphite is it takes a lot of patience. I know some people that, you know, they'll be like, why do you have all those pencils? I can do a drawing with just one pencil. And I certainly can too. But here's the deal. If I've only got a number 2 pencil, you're going to have to pretty much destroy the texture of that paper to get the full range that I can get with the 5, the 4H, the 2H, HB, 2B, and 4B. Whereas if I use those 5 pencils, I can preserve the paper. And it's just if I have to go back and erase stuff, I need to get rid of stuff, if I've got so many more options by doing that. And so you can absolutely do it with just one pencil, and if that's all you got, that's what you got. But the 5 give you a lot better range, and you don't have to sacrifice the paper as much either. So again, we're going to try to take care of the surface of this paper as much as possible. Now again, I'm holding my pencil in what's called a tripod grip. So I was holding it in tripod, which is holding between the 2 fingers and laying it down on your 3rd finger. You know, this is on top of your 3rd finger. For you right-handed folks, it looks like this. You know, so it's between this finger and that finger, and it's laying down on my 3rd. That's right there is a tripod grip. Okay. And there's basically just 2 handholds, a tripod grip, or where I'm holding it between my 2 fingers like so. That's a baton handhold. Got to extend the pinky, right? No, I'm just kidding. But I hold it mostly between the 2 fingers and the thumb. So now I'm holding this in a tripod, but I'm kind of letting the pencil fall forward because I'm drawing flat and it's a little weird, so I have to kind of change my handhold. The whole point of this thing is what I want you to do is not just watch this. Again, sometimes people think that I'll learn more by watching, and watching does help you to a certain point. It helps you to intellectualize what's going on, but I mean, it's pretty. It's kind of like going, well, if I want to learn piano, I'll just watch my teacher because I learn more. And I mean, what it's going to boil down to is the watching is going to tell you, well, it's basically playing the right notes in the right time and using the right finger hold. Well, all right. And then you got to get down there and you got to do it. You know, it's where the rubber meets the road is, you know, so it's the same thing with painting. There's things that you can understand intellectually, but to then be able to create them by hand is going to take quite a bit of time. Now, I give it a little bit of wall color. Now this tablecloth is black, and again there'll be a photograph, and there'll be a photograph within the frame. Again, you can see what I'm drawing and stuff like that, so you get a feel for it. But I'm gonna also upload a photograph of this so you can work from it. And that's what I want you to do. I would like you to watch the video, and then I want you to try to, you know, get your pencils together, get a 4H, a 2H, an HB, a 2B, and a 4B. And it doesn't matter what company you use. There's a lot of good ones out there. And so just a good company. Staedtler is one, and you've got Kimberly, and you've got Prismacolor, and you've got Derwent, and these all are fine companies that make really good graphite pencils. And so you can't go wrong. You don't want to mix and match though, because the companies, there's no standard. I mean, there's a general HB is kind of in this range, but you know, the HB in one manufacturer's arsenal is going to be a different value than the pencils in others. And you know, so for the most part, especially as beginning artists, I really, if you are a beginner, you know, go ahead and keep your pencils, you know, relatively, well, not relatively, but in the same manufacturer. You'll just have a lot easier time with it. Because I have a Prismacolor, and I know if I've got Prismacolors, well, then my 2H is as dark as an HB, you know, a full step, and there's some that are almost 2 steps different. So if I had, you know, all my pencils, it'd be like I had 2 of the same. If I had a Prismacolor that's a 2H and I had a Kimberly that's an HB, those 2 pencils are about the same range. And so it's just going to throw your whole system off. So again, keep your pencils by the same manufacturer. It'll just be much better for you, and you'll have a much more enjoyable experience. Now, there's a point here where we need to deal with the outside contour of this drawing. So I'm going to start to try to deal with this value touching the edge of this pear. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Oops, move that a little bit there. And then we'll, you know, continue on, because again, we don't want to get too far into this. You know, we didn't come here to draw the wall. It's taken me almost 20 minutes just to put in a wall value. And again, we didn't come here for that. So we're going to move on to the pear itself. But if I didn't finish the thought before, again, you're going to have a photograph, grab your pencils, grab your erasers, watch the video, and then try to execute one of your own using the photograph and see how successful you are. And that's what we want you to do. We want you to use these to not just, you know, watch for your, just to watch them, but I want you to actually grab the photograph and set out some paper and get your pencils and try to do a drawing, try to mimic what's been done and see how successful you are. All right. So again, we're going to get started on the pear. All right. So we're going to get onto that. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come on over in here. I'm going to use a piece of paper to protect my drawing. Again, I don't want my oils of my skin getting in there. And we're going to come on over here and we're going to start to put in the the values of the shadows. So we're going to go along here, and we're going to fill in the shadows for my pear. And I've got an HB pencil that I'm using. HB pencil again is like a number 2 pencil that you know the yellow ones, yellow orange ones that you see around everywhere and take to school and all that good stuff. So again, it's a nice workhorse pencil. It's middle value range. It's halfway between the 4H and the HB. But what's great is it can create some dark values and so that's why we're going to be using it. So let me go ahead. I'm going to try to fill this in. Again, I'm using a side to side. Now I just changed direction there a little bit, and that was just more because of what I was doing there than because of needing to change directions. I'm going to go ahead and pull some of this that out. Got a little bit, I think a little bit too much, but we're going to big sigh. Dang it. We're going to go ahead and again start to put in these so I'm going right to the core shadow. This is where the dark and the lights meet on this. So that's what this edge, this looks kind of like a line almost, but that's what this is. This is again the core shadow on this object, and the core shadow again is something that's unique to round surfaces, and it can really give something the feeling of having volume. In other words, being round or round-esque. This pear is really just a cylinder. It's a modified cylinder. There's all kinds of subtlety going on here on this thing, but it is a cone nonetheless. Again, this is part of the core shadow down here as it begins to turn away from the light and drop into shadow. Alright, now I'm going to take a 2H pencil, and that's just so I can make it a little bit lighter, a little bit easier. Again, it just makes it a little easier. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in I might actually take back the HB. Alright. So I'm trying to keep these. I'm not doing gradations yet. So sometimes people are like, "Wait, what are you doing? Where are those gradations?" And we're not doing gradations yet. We're just trying to put in the flat values of all the different form shadows, and there's 6 of them. There's light values, middle values, highlight, and that's in the light family. So there's light values, middle value, or highlight. And then in the shadow family, there's core shadows, which are right here. There's reflected light, which is the lightest. And then your dark tones are essentially your middle values and your shadows. So all right, whoops, moved that a little bit, didn't I? So again, I'm going to continue on putting in these, laying in this value, and again, it takes time with graphite. I'm thinking I'm going to grab one of these other pencils that are a little bit darker, and that have the woodless pencils that have more area. See if I like using that for this. Okay, so let's see, there's a 4B woodless graphite pencil. This is basically a baton handhold, but again, I'm holding it, just because it's at the end of the tips of my fingers. It might look a little bit like a tripod grip. Doing a wrist swing, so I'm moving my wrist back and forth. Alright, so again, we're just sneaking up on this thing. Constantly looking at what I'm drawing. That's another key thing, is keep looking at what you're actually drawing. That's going to really help as you're putting in all these little values and subtleties. So again, we're just putting in some more value here. I'm looking up there. I'm taking my eyes out of focus, or what's called squinting. All these things are going to help us as we're drawing and painting as well. You're always squinting. You're always looking for, what is it I'm really seeing? Double checking what you're seeing. It really helps to clarify your drawing. Big breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. sometimes, or a lot of times when when I'm drawing, that usually means, hey, I'm double checking my observations. But other times it's just, you're getting into that Zen state, and you kind of start to do some nice deep breathing, which is, really, it's a good place to be. That means your focus is on the object you're drawing, and that's always a good thing, to be focused on what it is you're trying to do on this. That was trying to clear off the board a little bit. We had some little crumbles on there. So, oops, I'm just barely starting to get this these shadows to start to have some form and some substance. Continue to stare up there. Now, sometimes your eyes, not just sometimes, your eyes actually will open up when you're looking into the shadows. So the shadows that, again, can seem so dark suddenly look much lighter. And that's something to always be on the lookout for, because suddenly we're not drawing the relationships like they were just moments ago. Our eye is now seeing something else, because it's trying to get more detail in the shadows, and that's something you have to look out for, because if your eyes you'll start to believe anything, because your eyes keep changing, and you're like, well, okay, I guess. And then you look in the lights, and the lights, your eye closes down because there's so much light there, so your eye closes down to see more, and all of a sudden it looks so much darker, and so your lights are getting darker, your darks are getting lighter, and then your drawing goes flat. And that's so you want to be careful of that. You want to be aware of that happening, so it doesn't become something that is taking you away from where you're missing what the drawing is actually doing, or what the object, or what the light on the object, that's what I'm trying to say, is actually doing. And so whenever you do that, you'll just rapidly blink your eyes, take your eyes out of focus, and then don't focus on any one part of your object, and all of a sudden you'll see the values again. And then as you start to stare into the shadows, your eye will start opening up, and the same thing starts to happen all over again. So right now I'm trying to darken for my dark tones, and the dark tones are your middle values in my shadows. So it's starting to get a little bit more value in here, which is what we want. And there's this, and you look for shapes, because there's so much going on here. Just take your eye, when you're taking your eyes out of focus, look for shapes. Like this looks like a V, a little V wrapping up and around, and this V comes around, and then it's a little bit lighter as this comes down to the foot, and the foot gets a little darker. But it's not all the same value either. The foot kind of bows out, and so it gets darker, and then a little bit lighter, and then it starts to go darker again. And just little subtleties like that are... Now I said, well, we're going to keep this flat to begin with, and I'm still not doing gradations yet, but I am trying to do some what we call smaller planes. They're still fairly flat, but we are starting to think of this plane is darker than this plane, and this plane is lighter than, say, this plane up here. And we want that, because it will start to give us some of this subtlety, or someone would say detail, but it's not really detail. It's these subtle plane changes. Every time something changes planes, it changes value. And so again, I want to make sure that I'm being very consistent and being very aware of what these values are doing as they're changing and shifting and doing all manner of things. Alright, so again, this is, I'm going to take my HB, and I think my HB, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to look up here again, and now I'm going to kind of follow the form, and I'm going to try to kind of lost some of that core shadow, how dark it is. And so we're going to come along here and just darken that core shadow in some key places as I'm dealing with my pear. And again, we're doing some of the same things down here. We're gonna again follow the curvature of the pear as I'm creating that core shadow as it goes around. My pear. Like so. And I think I do some of this up here too. It seems like it could use it. So I'm gonna make my strokes follow the form. This is round this way, and so I'm going to use these strokes that are rounder. So this is what we're looking like so far on this pear. Continuing to squint, continuing to try to see what's happening here. And again, I'm looking up there, I'm looking down at my pear, I'm looking up there, I'm looking down at my pear. All right, so I'm going to use my 2H pencil, and it's again a lighter pencil, and because it's lighter, it takes longer to build up, and it helps me with subtlety, like what's going on here in this in the shadows. So I want to darken some of these things ever so gently, and if I look at it cross-eyed with like a 4B or a 2B, it's going to go too dark. And even the 2H was going a little too dark too quickly for my taste. And so that's the time you get one. And then, so you said, all right, well, the HB's too much. And so I went ahead and grabbed the 2H. It's the next one. And if this one was going too dark too quickly, well, then I would grab the 4H. You know, now again, this is an H pencil. I want to use the side of the pencil. I'm using very little pressure, because if you don't, you're gonna dig into your paper, and again, you're gonna destroy your drawing. We don't want that. That's no good. So again, I'm going to go ahead and very, very gently use my pencil here. Now I'm going to grab my HB again. This is the outside contour of that pear. Now the pear does have some really interesting stuff going on. There's some reflected light. Reflected light can be seem very, very bright at times. And so we've got some reflected light on this pear, and I'm trying to make it. I'm trying to gauge it against what's going on here in the background, in terms of how light that is. And so I'm making it a little darker. As that goes darker, if that's that dark, I'm getting my 2B now, because now the other values need to be darker. If that's this is the lightest, well then everything else has to go darker than that. So again, this is all about these subtle relationships that are so important, that are going to give this a look of reality. And that's what we want. We want this to have a feeling of reality. Now again, I haven't done a lot of gradations, but still we're starting to get things that start to look like I have, because we have these 3 families: core, shadow, dark tones, reflected light, and then we have all these planes. Certain planes are a little lighter, certain planes are a little darker, and because of that, it's starting to look like it has a lot of depth, even though I really haven't even jumped into doing gradations yet. And so but it is so important, because again, this is already starting to feel like it has some depth. Jeez. So I'm looking here and I'm like, well, I'm going a little too quick, leaving a little bit too many spaces in between my lines. And so it's bad draftsmanship. I'm chiding myself. And don't do that. Don't be that guy. So that's what that was. I was, come on, you know what you're supposed to be doing. So again, I'm going to go ahead and start to reassess some different areas here that I think that, like this area goes darker. As this goes darker, this will look lighter. So I've lost some value through there because I had to darken this in relationship to that. But this has to be darker than that. So it's all these subtle relationships. It's all about what is the value next to another value that gives it its feeling of roundness or flatness, or it's really just, it's almost like a dance. It's a better yet, for those that are magic lovers, sleight of hand, where we are making people believe a certain sort of reality that actually doesn't exist. This is a flat piece of paper after all. This is not anything that's even remotely three-dimensional, and yet if we do our job right, you can have people thinking, wow, that thing really looks like it's got a three-dimensional quality to it. And that's when you've really done, there's a lot of reflected light here. That was probably a big mistake, so I'm going to take that probably back out, because that was just a little too strong. So again, yeah, we're constantly looking to make, again, our this is our illusion. We are magicians on a stage, and the stage is this two-dimensional piece of paper that is flat as a pancake, and we're making people think that in fact it's not. It's an illusion. It's a mystery. You're fooling people's eyes, which is nice, because what we're creating, because that's what we're doing. We are showmen. We are performers. In a visual sense, we are, creating a perceived reality, and that perceived reality can be whatever we make it. That's part of the job of the artist, is to create in the viewer a feeling of of some sort of reality that actually may or may not exist. And yet, if you do it correctly, it can feel very true to life. And that's how some of these artists like Andrew Wyeth and Norman Rockwell and others were able to inspire just entire generations, because of their ability to show on the stage that was their canvas or a piece of paper a certain slice of Americana, a certain idea, a certain treasured memory or place or event. And nowadays with photography and cinematography and all these things, and everyone with smartphones, and sometimes people make the mistake that maybe it's not as powerful as it once was. But I would say that it's even more powerful now, because if you know what you're doing, your drawing, your painting, your artwork will stand out from something that was just shot by somebody down the street or next to you or what have you. Because it takes an artist. Now, people can sometimes stumble onto a good picture, and that happens too. But they rarely stumble more than a couple of times. Whereas someone that knows what they're doing, they can reproduce that over and over and over again and create quite a quite an impact on the viewer. And that's important to understand, that that it's at the very best, the people that can do it consistently is because they've been trained. They are artists, and they are inspiring people in so many different ways. And that's what I love about art. That's what I love about creating art, is how that we can again inspire people, that we are visual magicians, and that's what makes it fun, is having that ability to convince people of things that may or may not be or are the way we wish it to be, as opposed to the way they are. Or sometimes you are trying to show not just something that alludes to reality, but reality of it in and of itself, and that can certainly be powerful as well. This is a 4B pencil that I'm using. I'm going to just try to bring this edge, give it a little bit more firmness. This was a little bit too bright down here. I don't want to get rid of it entirely, but it's just a little on the bright side. And then this down here was even darker than this up here, so. And part of that is because this tablecloth is black. The tablecloth is actually reflecting back up into this pear. And so there's this edge along here that looks very, very, very dark, because it's that tablecloth reflecting back into the pear itself, and as the pear tucks under. So it's this plane is going down. Sorry, it's going down this direction, and it's catching the reflection of that black tablecloth. Now, sometimes people will say, well, and it's a good one, draw what you see. Some people will also, artists have their philosophies, and depending on who to train them. And one of the philosophies is, no, don't draw what you see, because sometimes your eyes can deceive you, but draw instead what you know. And if you draw what you know, then you're going to be in a better place than if you draw what you see. And so that's another sort of philosophy for those that that are in the art world. And I've always been of the mindset to temper what you see with what you know. So we're going to get on into here. So we've put in some of the values of the darks. Core shadow, we have the dark tones that are a little lighter than the core shadow, and the reflected light that's even lighter still. Now this is reflected light too, and it's a little brighter than this. Now sometimes we're going to make a decision, an artistic decision, and I just don't know that this is reading very well. And I just don't know that it's that, I'm not sure that it's that important. So I'm thinking of just softening it just a bit. Also thinking of softening this down a bit, because this is not as light as this is. And I think that's working a little better now, as far as that goes. And again, we could play with this all day long. I think we'll leave that. This still seems a little bright for what it is. But again, I think we'll leave it. I'm going to go ahead and bring a little more value down into here. Like that. Alright, I think we're done. So, at least for in the shadows over here. So we're going to come on in here with, I believe, a HB pencil. And I'm going to start putting in some of these middle values. Using this HB pencil. And again, first I'm just going to go ahead and put it in fairly flat. We're not even going to worry. Now again, this is planes, almost like the facets of a ring. So again, if we get these planes with the right value, the rest will take care of itself, as they say, in terms of the drawing. So, and continue to put some of these values on here. This value down here. So again, we're putting in what are called the dark middle values. They're the values right next to where the object goes into shadow. And we're trying to make sure that we capture some of these different values on here. Some of the different shapes. Again, I'm always looking for, alphanumeric shapes and things like that to show that, or that it's easy to see. If I can go, hey, that looks like a V or an M, or sort of a triangle, or so alphanumeric. But I also include two-dimensional shapes, circles, triangles, squares. So we're fairly good at really identifying shapes. So probably kept our ancestors alive. They could see at a very far distance that the thing running towards them was a tiger and not an antelope. So we're really geared into shapes, and the more we can identify them and put the values that we see on them, the more it's going to look like what we're drawing. So now this is a little bit lighter because this kind of comes up over and like down the side of a mountain a little bit, and so that's why this is catching a little bit light. It's getting a little lighter because it's coming down at an angle. So again, this really is like the facets of a ring or a piece of jewelry, in that we have all these different all these different planes. Again, this plane here is a little darker than this here, so I'm going to start putting in the idea that this shape, which almost looks sort of like a little eye. It kind of flares at the top here a little bit, flares at the bottom a little bit, but then through the middle, it's a little straighter. So, again, alphanumeric shapes. It's a really wonderful tool. Never be afraid to use a tool that works for you. And again, we're very shape oriented. We're taught at a very young age. And again, I don't know how long this has continued, in this digital age where they're Probably gonna be a point where they quit handing kids pencils and start handing them, notebooks or something, laptop computers, and they never learn to do penmanship. I hope that's not the case, but anyways, because of that, we're very, again, and other reasons as well, as I mentioned, we're very good at shape. Look at the shapes, identify the shapes, identify the value, and keep going from there. That's the secret. And and again, the more we look at shapes, the more we look for shapes, the better off our shape recognition will be. And so, don't keep looking. Don't take my word for it. Look up there and see what shapes. I pinched out a little bit of the eraser so I could lighten it through there. See what the shapes are that you're seeing up there, and then create those shapes. So this right here is my light values. And so I need to get into there, but there's also, now this is a little lighter than this value over here, but there's a little triangle that kind of comes in over, again, into this shape. Like so. And this has like a little M. There's a little M shape that's starting to happen. And so again, I'm trying to make sure that I don't ignore that or omit it. It's very important for the drawing of this pear. And I'm going to continue looking up there, squinting my eye. I'm even taking my eye out of focus because my eye's getting a little tired. Looking up there again, and again trying to see a little bit more information. This seems like it needs to be darker there. This is supposed to be our light values. These are our middle values, and we have usually a light and dark side to those. And there's also a highlight here that I'm going to be looking to create. And so, oops, that was a little too much. I think I'm going to go ahead and grab a 2H pencil. Again, it's a little lighter. I was just using an HB. See if I can just soften that a bit. Now again, I haven't really done gradations. I've been using these looking for the smaller planes and trying to get those planes to be accurate, and just by doing that, it's already starting to have a feeling of, again, a form. And there's times where you'll use what it's this is I'm using more line than continuous tone. And it can start to have sort of a contour or hatched, some people call cross hatching, but I haven't really crossed anything just yet. I could come over here and do a little bit of, but I'm doing it very softly. Usually cross hatching is very distinct. You're leaving the mark behind so it can be seen, whereas this is very, very soft and subtle, but it can be a very effective way of making it very clear what direction the value is going and what line the value is going. This kind of comes over like a little bump, so I could make these little arcs, again using a that's going around the contour, like so, as I'm drawing this. Alright, so again, just continuing to make things. This is a different plane than this. This is a little darker than that. You know, just these little bits and pieces are going to really help. This is a bit of a highlight. It comes down right there. This is a slightly different, it's light, but it's not as light as the highlight. So this is going to be a little bit darker. Again, I can come over here and I can, you know, I'm still keeping this fairly soft, but you just saw me do a little bit of hatching. Sometimes hatching, again, can really help define a plane. And that's what all these are, these nice, subtle little planes of value. Like so. I'm going to get my small little eraser in here, see if I can pull out a little bit more of that. We've got our highlight up here. Let's see if I can pull for, you know, that highlight. That's starting to look a little nicer. Pull that little crumble out of there. Start to get my HB. I need just a little bit more dark. Starting to get kind of a nice sculptural quality of this as we're dealing with the planes. And this is why, so when we first draw like spheres and cubes, and of course those are challenging the first time we do it, but you can see how this is even more challenging. This isn't as uniform as a cube or a sphere. It's got all these little microplanes to it, and again we have to we want to use everything you've learned. Now if some of this stuff that I'm talking about sounds foreign to you, again I've got my class that I'm putting together a class on the fundamentals to help clarify this, but again for form shadows and stuff there's a lot of stuff about it in a lot of different places, but again I'm going to go ahead and put that together. It's going to take a while. I just was going over my how many videos are going to have to be recorded to put together the fundamentals course, but it'll get done. It's going to take a bit of time, but again, if you're in my classes and you know, then you've heard about this stuff, and this is just kind of showing you how all this stuff goes together, how I put it all together into a drawing, and hopefully a drawing that looks good, because that's what we want to do. We want to make some drawings that look good. And so this is again some of these planes. Now some of this stuff is getting a little harsh. Some of these are actually starting to look like they're a faceted ring or something. So I could come over here and soften this transition and soften this transition, that little edge that looks like kind of like a little lazy river running up through there. We can just bring a little value across that line and soften it a bit. And there's going to be some of that as well, because you don't want stuff to be too hard or what have you. So yeah, we've talked about this in class. This is just all the same stuff. It's just we're trying to, again, we've got all these different little planes. So we've got all these little bits of middle value that, again, like this right over here that I'm hitting is a sort of it's a middle value, but it's a darker middle value. And again, these little we almost you can call them microplanes, because this is on the lit side. It's not in shadow, it's in light. It's not on the edge, and yet sometimes it might be like, well, why is that so dark? Like, what is that weird? Yeah, and it's just because it's changing direction. This is going down and away from the light, and it's kind of got just hooked around too much, so I need to sort of repair that. Then this is gonna come around here. Now there's an edge here, so I'm going to come to that edge and bring just a little value off of it again, just to soften it, to make it just turn around that edge just a little bit more. And that really helps. Again, we're going to kind of come over here. I'm going to squint my eye, take my eye to focus, look up there. So again, I'm darkening this just a little bit. It seemed like it was a little too much of a line going down here, and so again, I'm softening it just a scotch. I'm looking back up there to see what I may have missed. This thing kind of rounds around here and then does this like a little M. So again, that means that this over here on this side is going to be getting a little darker because the light's coming from this direction. So this is going to get slightly darker as this starts to get a little bit lighter. Let's see. And there's even some smaller microplanes I'm kind of going to deal with just right now for just a moment. Gotta be careful because they're soft. That's the whole thing. Usually when we get into this, we get a little bit too many jumps in contrast, and so you want to start on the softer side before you start, going and getting too dark too quickly or something like that. All right. You start to see this kind of coming at an angle here, and this is coming up and picking the light up a little bit more through there. Soften this a little bit more. I think we could probably do a little bit more still. So bring this around. A little softer. Same thing here. I'm going to bring this around. And so this is, and again, you could continue on doing this for all kinds of time. It's once you get into the groove, sometimes it's kind of hard to stop. Again, we got a little microplane here that's catching just a bit of value. Just a scotch. Again, I'm starting to get a very clear line through there, which is probably a little bit too, well, not even probably, it is a little bit too much. There's just no two ways about it. So we're going to break this line up. There's some little bits of little pockets that get a little lighter and darker. They're going to help break this line up a little bit. You can also, there's some, again, this little, sort of this plane, these little planes will break and cross over a little bit. This needs to be getting darker as it comes down. Like so. Squinting my eye up there. I'm going to get a 2H again because I want to do some real subtle stuff. Again, this is going to be getting a little bit lighter, a little darker as it comes down. Whoops. I need to get a little closer to this so I can actually see that. There we go. Again, I'm trying to get just a subtle darker, getting lighter as it comes up. use my HB again. Bring this in. So again, just making it a little bit darker as it comes down. Do my 2H again. This is and it's getting darker because not because this is a lighter. Well, this is a lighter pencil, so it's not getting darker because it's a darker pencil. But these lighter pencils that are harder go deeper into the texture without having to press any harder. Just because of how hard they are, they naturally go in deeper, and so it's going to take all these little light white dots that are the texture of the paper and turn them into light gray dots, and so that's going to make this this is going to darken this as I'm doing that. This is still my light values over here as far as that goes, and so that's still reading that way, which is good. I'm looking over here as this transitions up under the bulb and ball of this pear. Right through there. This is supposed to be a highlight on this side. Like so. This is of course a highlight down here as well. This goes just a little bit darker right through there. And these are these microplanes. Once you've got the values established, these will never get as dark as anything over here. I'm just darkening certain areas that are showing the brownness of the pear, things like that. Going around, I'm going at this, making a mark that's going around the form. And again, they've come together so much, they've overlapped and starting to to merge, and so it's a very effective illusion that we're creating. And so again, you just keep taking your eyes out of focus and keep asking yourself, what more could be done? Could this be done? Could that be done? And if the answer is yes, go ahead and do it. And if the answer is no, well then don't do it. And that's kind of learning. Each one of these values is kind of like a key on the piano, and so we're trying to create harmonies and melodies, and so we're looking up there and of course we're giving it our best shot. We're not just playing somebody else's music, we're actually trying to compose an original piece, and that's why a drawing, I think, is in many ways even harder than music, because music, many times, unless you are composing your own, you're sitting down to play a song that was written by someone, whereas when we're drawing, unless we're doing a master study copying from someone else, we actually are sitting down to create an original piece. We're sitting down to make something that doesn't exist. We are, really using our creative chops. And I don't say that to disparage any sort of ideas of music. I'm just saying it seems to me if you're playing music and if you're playing somebody else's song, it's a little easier than if you're composing your own. I could be wrong, but that seems pretty difficult to me. And again, I do know for a fact, though, if we're drawing from somebody else's drawing, it's much easier than if we are, creating our own. It's a much harder, much more difficult thing to do. But the reason we do it is because we get something original out of it. We get something that no one else has done, at least in the same way, because even though we are trying to use similar techniques, we're all different people. We're all, we're all unique, and that comes out in drawing. And that's the great thing about it is how much of that person will come out through their drawing. That's what's so exciting about it. I'm going to go ahead and come up here. Now I haven't done, now again, it was really about this, we're really doing this about, this is about the pear. This isn't about, the stem, but I'm going to very quickly sort of knock out this stem. I'm just going to go ahead and make some lines that go around that go with the form this way. Then I'm going to make some lines that go around the form this way. So we're going to do some cross contour. Now I got to be careful because right now that sticks out because there's no place really doing that just yet. But I'm not going to do just that. I'm going to come on over here and I'm going to so yeah, I have to be careful from, we're doing the stem over here, and I got to be careful that, I was doing a little cross hatching up there, but it can't be all cross hatching or this will stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm going to use, I'm going to use a little bit of it, but it's going to be covered with some value. Looking up there, taking a look up there, then trying to draw it here. So alright, so we got just a real quick render. This is probably a little bit too bright, so we'll take that down. In other words, we'll darken it. Sometimes people will be like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, sorry. Like I'll say I'll make it louder, or I'll make it, this or that, or I'm going to make this a softer voice. And sometimes people are like, wait a minute, what? it's so, yeah. Usually if I'm saying, talking about voice or something like that, I'm talking about darkening stuff or making stuff, a little bit more clear and things like that. So let's see. So I'm just gonna, I'm going ahead and I'm putting some value down through here. I'm putting some value down through here. This is in shadow right along here because the pear turns up, and then the light is hitting that and like is here and casting shadow onto this. So we're going to have this core shadow, and it's going to get lighter as it goes away from there. And then we also have that this is some light is starting to hit the pear over here, and so same things happens on apples and things. There's a little funnel up at the top that the stem grows out of, and so it really does some wild stuff. Value will reverse, going, this is darker here, and then this goes lighter here, and sometimes that boggles your mind, like, wait a minute, and but that's because this is going up while this is turning behind. Now, there's a lot of and I gotta say the model that we've got here is a hand painted pear, and you'll see in the when on the video it'll probably look a little strange. It's nicely done. It's a well done pear as a gift from one of my students. It's very large too. It's really great as a prop, but it is as a plastic pear. And so there's lots on this pear. There's lots of these little. It's supposed to be pigment, like little freckles, at the top, and I'm not going to necessarily worry about those today. We're not dealing with detail, we're just dealing with form, meaning the planes and everything, and is it round, and does that feel like it's round, and that's the stuff we're really trying to do today, is deal with the different planes of the pear. So we're gonna call this right here is gonna be good for now. For that, without having to go too much into detail, we'll pull a little bit of that out, bring a little bit more light in there. Let's see, let me squint my eye and see if there's a couple more places where we can bring in some light. It's my 2H pencil. Something like that. This is a highlight, this is not, so this has to go slightly darker. Not a ton, it's very subtle. We're gonna lighten this up a little bit. Just this area right through here. Just a little bit more, maybe. Through there. And I think we're looking, if we look at this, I think the pear's doing a pretty good job. This is a little hard, so we could go over here and try to bring a little value out from it so it doesn't look quite like such a line. Like so. If it got too harsh, again, I could come over here and I could very gently dust it like that. And again, that will just soften things a little bit. You can do that, but you don't want to get in the habit of doing it too often. It's an option, but again, you just don't want to. You don't want to be the first thing that you hold off on it. You don't want it to be the first thing you reach for. Again, we don't want this to be flat through here, so this is supposed to be getting darker as it comes down. Bring a little bit. Deep breath. It's like, you hold it in and then all of a sudden you're like, you're letting it go because, you're holding your breath, literally holding your breath going, is it going to work? All right, so I think we've got a pretty good looking pear here. I'm going to go ahead and just very quickly put in some value on the tablecloth. This is supposed to be, again, a dark tablecloth, so I'm going to now with graphite, it takes a long time to build up really dark darks without destroying the paper. Again, if you crank on that and it doesn't have that again, we're getting rid of that texture, that's not a good thing. So again, for now, we're just going to start off a little on the light side. Again, as this goes darker, the pear is going to look lighter. And if I'm doing these darks, again, I'm going to have to come back into them and layer other pencils to get them to go darker. So I'll do a little bit of that, but Yeah, we don't want it to become the wall where we're sitting there for 30 minutes trying to get the wall to be right, or however long it was. Far too long in my humble opinion. But I'm also looking at this tablecloth, and I'm asking myself, how do we want to end this? There's some people call it vignetting. How do I want to end this? And you don't have to, fill in the rectangle, as it were. You can, kind of fade it out, kind of like what I'm doing a little bit. I'm not fading it a ton out, but I'm not. I can make this shape of that edge whatever I want it to be. And so let's go ahead and again bring out the cast shadow a bit. Now, for those where things touch, and it's going to happen. Well, it's going to happen in the cast shadow. Is occlusion shadows, and that's where the pear is actually touching the table. And occlusion shadows are very dark, and that's where anything, again, a surface touches another surface. So all the wonderful, the line that seems between the upper and bottom lip, that's an occlusion shadow. The lines between the fingers that will appear when we put our fingers together, those are occlusion shadows. They're so dark, and can look almost like lines where you have an object touching another object. If I put a pear next to another pear where they touch, some people refer to that as kissing because they're just barely touching, on an edge somewhere. But that happens, and that creates an occlusion shadow. There'll be a line there. So again, I'm going to come over here into the whoops. Let's go ahead and come in here. Now this is supposed to be, again, on a very dark tablecloth. So I'm going to try to bring in. What am I using? Oh, I'm using a 2B. Whoops. So I'm trying to play up this edge, be very clear that we have a darker, two edges coming together. One's darker and one's lighter. The lighter being the pear, even though it's in shadow. This tablecloth is so dark, and the darks are so rich that it's darker than the pear. I'm gonna get my 4B woodless. This will just cover some more area. Like so. Whoops. Now, I got to be careful here. Now, again, if you start cranking on it again, you'll score the paper, and usually you don't want to do that. Now, if you have to at the very end, that's fine, but that's after you've figured out what all your values are supposed to be and what your gradations are and all that sort of stuff. Well, then you're like, all right, well, everything's worked out, and all I need to do is darken this. Well, then, yeah, you can go ahead and do whatever you got to do. Now, I'm drawing on a hard surface. This is on masonite panel, and the masonite panel is covered with this white tempered laminate. It's called melamine, and this is tempered melamine, meaning it's about like something you might see on old countertops in an older home that has laminated countertops instead of stone. But I don't know what's going on. Oh, so anyways, I wouldn't want to do this on a pad of paper because the pad of paper is like, soft. It's cushiony, and so you won't get the rich darks. This will give me a little better darker range because of this hard panel beneath it. And this panel has very little texture, so it's really great for drawing Sometimes even the masonite and things like that can just have a little too much texture to them, and so this is a great way of getting one of these. Is a great way of being able just to get the, to not have a surface that's going to interfere with your drawing. All right, so this is, I think we're done here. We've got enough drawing and enough value here that we can really, the table is just dark enough. If I wanted to, let's say I said I was going to show you how we could go back into this. And even this dark here, we can go back in with I start with the lightest pencil. So this is my darkest pencil. This is my 4B. Again, it's a woodless pencil, but it's just like the ones that I have that are wood pencils. I would do that first, and then I could come over here. Whoops, straighten this back up. Come back over here with a 4H pencil. Now again, the 4H pencil, because it's not because it's a darker pencil, but because it's a harder pencil, goes deeper into that texture and gets rid of more of those white dots of the texture. And so it takes an area that is full of these white dots, and those white dots become light gray dots, and because of that, it looks darker. So again, I can layer this and get this to be even more uniform. So I could go ahead and take a little bit of time. After I've done this, now let's say I want to continue on, I could then grab a 2H pencil. And again, this 2H pencil won't go as deep as the 4H, but it's darker than the 4H, so it'll darken some of those, again, those dots and make them a little darker gray, like so. And so again, this is a real great way of getting transitions and gradations. Once I put a couple layers of the 2H, I can come in with an HB, and again, the HB is darker than the 2H, but it's harder than the 4B, and so again, it will take, it won't go as deep into the texture, the fine little dots, but it'll take some of the bigger dots and make them a little darker than the 4B could, and so forth and so on. And this is how we can get our values to. Let's come over here and do the same thing here. We get in this 4H, and because it's also going to make it smoother. So sometimes people are like, well, if I don't blend, how can I get a nice smooth texture? Well, you can make it look a lot smoother just by using a 4H pencil and a 2H pencil, and very gently. I'm not cranking on this thing, because if I push too hard, my other graphite won't stick to this. The harder pencils are slicker, and graphite is a industrial, breaks down friction, and so it makes things slicker, and so again, you want to be careful with it. Now, if I needed it smoother than that, because this has more texture than the wall, well, then I could get a brush in there. I could do a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? I could change the texture slightly if it just wasn't slick enough, and I wanted to continue to make it slicker. But so this is our Pear, and it really starts to have a feeling of volume. We've got our light values, we've got our light middle values, we've got our dark middle values. Of course, we've got dark middle values over here as well. We have our core shadow. Oh, don't forget the highlight. We have core shadows, and then dark values. These are dark values. Reflected light, reflected light, reflected light, dark values. So again, there's one of 6. It's either highlight, light values, or middle values. Middle values have a light and dark side, or it's core shadow, or dark tones, or reflected light. And if we can do that, we'll have a drawing that really will feel like it has a lot of depth. Again, look for some of my other videos that I'll be coming out with. Again, we're going to be doing a fundamentals. We're going to do some more graphite, and we'll even start doing some more advanced graphite, where we're doing not just little studies, but bigger still life arrangements, and dealing with how how to make those look, how to deal with something where we got a lot more information and a lot more complexity. So I hope you guys again will take the little photograph that's going to be included and do your own drawings and enjoy some creativity and try to recreate a very similar drawing. Have yourself a very good day and stay creative. Bye bye now.